What's up everybody, I'm Z-Wade, the Z-Wade and Z-Wade Photo, and today we are going to do the silliest lenses for your Nikon Z9. Now unfortunately I don't own every single Z lens, and so we'll just have to do the ones that I have. The first lens on our silliest lens journey is the 28mm f2.8. This is the SE, the non-SE is the same optically, this just has a retro look. But the fact remains for both of them that both of these are kind of silly on your Nikon Z9. Not because there's anything wrong with this lens. I love this lens, okay? This lens is fantastic. But on the Z9, you're kind of underutilizing what this camera will give you. This is not the fastest focusing lens ever. It's not the sharpest. You get the point. You'd be much better off with the 14 to 24 or the 24 to 70 if you wanted exactly 28 millimeters. I mean, just look. Not that looks better because they don't, okay? The image quality out of this lens is, again, fantastic, but it does make the Z9 feel a little back heavy. If you're gonna manual focus, this actually gets in the way. If you enjoy manual focusing, or if you're in a tough situation where the autofocus is just not getting it for you, it's a little bit awkward, you know, it's just, you can't get up there that good. It's a little uncomfortable, whatever. It's just goofy, okay? This is a goofy lens, and I don't want to sound pretentious, but if you've got the money for a $6,000 camera, you would be much better off just saving some money and getting the 24 to 70 or the 14 to 24. Not because of price, not being pretentious here, but they do balance the weight of the Nikon Z9 a lot better than this one. And also the image output of those lenses is on a completely different level, and it really does, you know, really bring out the potential of the Nikon Z9. The next silly lens for your Nikon Z9 is unfortunately the 40mm f2. Okay, again, I love this lens. It's actually, I think it's one of my favorites in the Nikon Z lens lineup, and it's incredibly underpriced. But again, it doesn't give any weight to the camera, and so it feels a little back heavy. There's nothing to balance it out. The image quality, way better than acceptable from the 40mm f2. But again, with a $6,000 camera, this camera performs like a $6,000 camera, and the 24 to 70 or, you know, perhaps the 50mm 1.8 or the 50mm 1.2, those are going to be a little bit better for the Z9 as far as the balance that they give the Z9, and also their image quality is much higher than this, although this is fantastic, okay? This is way underpriced. If you want this lens, if you just want a 40mm and you don't want to take a 50mm and just go like this, you know, just back up a little bit. If you don't want to do that, I mean, go ahead and get it. Manual focusing, again, just like the last lens, is a little bit awkward with that, you know, portrait grip there. But, you know, it's kind of silly. I mean, look at it. It looks silly on the Z9. I mean, it really does. Looks aren't everything. In fact, they're almost nothing, right? How does it perform? I mean, it actually, it's a great lens on the Nikon Z9. It's just a little silly. For just a couple $100 more, you can get the 50mm 1.8S. And although I do love this lens, that lens is also underpriced, and it's kind of unrealistically good for its price point and for its form factor. And the form factor is a little bit longer, and so it's just kind of easier to handle. That would be a better option. That's where I'm going to leave it. And our final silly lens for your Nikon Z9 is the Nikon Z MC 50mm f2.8. Why is it silly? Well, the form factor is a little bit silly, but not as silly as the others. It doesn't have a super great balance to the Z9, although it is a little bit better than these. But really, I don't find the Z9 to be a particularly convenient camera for macro photography. Now, I love the macro images from the Nikon Z9. I really do. They look really good, okay? The files are beautiful, colors beautiful, everything. It's perfect. It's just huge for macro photography. I like it enough that I will take it out instead of the Z6 II. However, I think another camera in the future with higher megapixels or the same megapixels with the form factor of the Z6 II or Z7 II would be a more convenient macro kind of camera. And for that reason, with this being the form factor that it is, and the Z9 being as heavy as it is, I don't find this to be particularly good for a macro setup. Now, if you want a Swiss Army kind of setup, it's totally fine. It looks a little bit silly. I would say that the 105 is a fantastic pairing with the Z9 because of its form factor. It's a little bit heavier, balances a little bit better, but I don't really want to take out my $6,000 Z9 with the 50mm f2.8 just because it's not as good as, well, even the 50mm 1.8 is much faster, right? And so if I'm going to take a 50mm, it's definitely not going to be this. Every other 50mm is better than this particular one. And if I'm going to shoot macro, I'm just taking the 105, okay, if I'm being honest. But this isn't as silly as some of the other lenses in this video. In the comments below, let me know what you think is the silliest lens for the Nikon Z9, and I'll catch you later.